Well, this is where Justin usually says hello and welcome to the Creative Writing Life podcast. He's Justin Slow. Well, Justin is a little under the weather today, so you got me, just me, Paul Zeidman. Happy to be here, and I'm very thrilled. It's taken a lot of finagling of our schedules and trying to coordinate here and there, but we finally got, I love this title, Literary Citizen, Tonya Todd, on the show today. Tonya, thank you so much for coming on today.
Meow, and thank you for having me.
What a great intro. That is fantastic. So as regular listeners and viewers of the show know, we start things off talking about maybe something we've read or watched lately. And so I'll give you time to think about that. For me, my wife and I, we've been catching up on the new episodes of Doctor Who, where they introduced the new Doctor, Judy Gatwa. And so we finally got to watch that one this past week and really liked it. Thought they did a great job and really looking forward to seeing what he does with the role. And I think the next one doesn't come out until next week, which is Christmas. If you're listening to this in the far future, it's all irrelevant. You can find it somewhere online, I'm sure. But we really enjoyed it. And I'm, of course, a longtime Doctor Who fan. So, I just love all of it. So I was just happy to be able to see that and not have to wait 6 months for it. It was on like the next day. So that was great. Tonya, so what about you? Anything interesting or not interesting?
Two things. I'm watching Monarch, which it's surprisingly excellent. I was
Wow.
nervous. I was nervous, but the special effects look great and the storyline is really good.
Okay.
And it's one of those ones where it's like, man, I wish I had waited and just let the whole thing come out, because at the end of each episode, you're like, I have to wait another week, you know?
Oh, is that how they're releasing it? It's not all 8 episodes at once type of thing?
Right. And then what I'm reading is A Dowry of Blood, and it is absolutely phenomenal.
What genre would that be? There's so many possibilities with that title.
It is a memoir of sorts written by Dracula's first wife.
Oh, wow.
And it's so good that I am only allowing myself a chapter a day because I do not want it to end.
Oh, I really was hoping you were going to say you're only doing a chapter at a time because it's so scary and that
Oh,
you.
no, no, no. That kind of stuff doesn't scare me.
Okay. Well, that's cool. So I do have to ask, since you're watching Monarch, have you seen Godzilla -1?
Not yet.
Oh, okay.
I think I'm going to see it next week.
Okay. I think I can probably say with almost 100% certainty that you will love it.
I'm hearing really good things about it, which is why I want to see it as soon as possible. But, with
Hmm.
the holidays, it's difficult to be like,
Right.
well, I'm going to see a movie instead of spending time with family.
Your family would probably like it too because I've talked about this because we saw it last week, and it is a Godzilla movie, but it is not a Godzilla movie. It's right up there, if not better than the very first one from like what, 54 or 56.
I'm hearing that the people actually matter in
Yeah,
this.
because it's about the
That's usually the
characters.
issue. It's like, you don't care about the people, just show me
Yeah.
the monsters.
Yes, it's not like making Godzilla a character. It's almost like Godzilla's the shark in Jaws. That, he plays a part, but he's not, it doesn't revolve around him. He just happens to be this incredibly destructive force of nature that
I'm
comes
still
in.
going to root for him.
Well, when you watch it, you might not. And what else? Also, I'll just throw this in before we get to the you part that I just read today that in January they're going to release a monochrome version of it, so like black white with silver tones, and
Ooh,
that'll be in Japan only. They haven't made any announcements about if they're going to release it elsewhere, so I'm really hoping they do. And if they did that in the States, I would say I am really tempted to go see it because just to see that on the big screen just sounds like it would
yeah.
be phenomenal.
I would definitely go see it in the States. Otherwise, maybe we have to arrange a field trip to Japan, right?
Oh, now there are worse things. Okay, so Tonya Todd, again, welcome to the show. So tell us about yourself. I mean, I was looking at your bio, author, actress. I love the Sin City cinephile because you are in the Vegas area. So tell us about how you got started. Were you the I've always been a writer since I was a kid, or like I just took to writing a little later and discovered, hey, I'm pretty good at this. I like doing this. What is your story?
I did love to write as a kid, but at a certain point, I didn't believe that it's something I could do and make a living at doing it, because at that point I wasn't seeing very many people who looked like me having success at it.
Hmm.
Something with acting, it was like there were a few people and everybody knew those three people who were doing it, but it wasn't that the odds were against it so much that I just didn't believe in myself.
Hmm.
And I ended up having this dream that I was hosting a Marvel Halloween party. And I was going as Storm and my guy was going as Loki. And I had this dream about Loki kidnapping Storm and like this. It was so vivid and so crazy. And I felt like I was her. Like the dream started with me just in the air. It was crazy. And the next day I was like, I can't get this out of my head. So I just started writing it. And I was writing the whole story and someone said, "You're writing fan fiction," which I had never heard of.
Hmm.
But as I was writing it, I kept getting these other things and it's like, that's not them. I'll just put that aside because it seems really cool, but it's not these characters. And I ended up writing this side story, never finished the fan fiction story, which was my dream. So based on their two character profiles, I have this entire different story of, and it's not even the same things that happen. It's just similar themes, I guess you would say, of
Okay.
love, obsession, that kind of thing. And I wrote over 200,000 words.
Oh
And it was,
my.
wow, well, maybe I should join a writing group and figure out what to do with this.
Sure. So when you were kind of like veering off from, these established characters, did that give you a little more freedom? Like, okay, I can do this because, I know, Storm wouldn't do this or Loki wouldn't do this. So that
Right.
gave enable like, well, this is my character. This is an original thing. So I can just, do whatever the heck I want.
Here's the thing. The character based on Loki, he talked to me. So I didn't have to think about what he would do. He was always telling me.
Wow.
And so it would be like, oh my gosh, really? And it wasn't immediately that he did that. It wasn't until I had another character talk to me that I was like, all right, well, let's see if this works with other characters. And then he is now the character who talks to me the most.
Okay, so that raises the question, and we have talked about this on the show before, that because my area of specialty, I do more screenplays. Now Justin does books and screenplays, but we've talked about outlining.
Mhm.
So there are some writers like me who I just can't just I'm not a pantser. I can't just just like I'm just going to let the
I'm
characters tell me
I'm
where
a
to go.
plantser.
A
So
plantser.
I can't really write a story until I know how it's going to end. I have to
Okay.
I know certain points, but I let my characters make choices. I don't say, nope, this isn't what I had planned for you. I've had these arguments. It's like, this is what you're going to do. Well, I wouldn't do that, so I'm not doing it.
So do some of the choices ever surprise you? Like, you start
Yes,
writing and realize, oh, hey, I never thought of that. Oh, what a great new direction this is.
definitely. I had a character come out to me. It's like, well, how did I not know that? Like, shouldn't I know that?
That's great. So, okay, so you went from, fan fiction to your own original work. So what were you able to do with that? Did you think, okay, I'm going to publish this, I'm going to seek an agent with it?
It's right now, it's with my agent on submission.
Okay.
But that was years in the making. It's like this was I didn't know what I was doing. 200,000 words, clearly not ready for publication. So, I joined writing groups and I have critique groups and I have refined it. And at a certain point, I had my first agent said, what we're getting back from editors is that he seems like a vampire. I'm like, but I was really trying not to make him a vampire. And I was like, and wouldn't he have told me? He talks to me all the time. Wouldn't he have told me he's a vampire? So she's like, that's what they're saying. Like, we're getting this on multiple people are saying he feels like a vampire. So either go with it or tone some of that down. So I sat down with it and said, okay, let me just see what happens if I make him a vampire.
Okay. So was this kind of like post Anne Rice, or it was like more during post Twilight? That like which kind of vampire were they getting the vibe of?
Definitely not Twilight.
I didn't know sparkles.
Only in his eyes.
Oh, of course, of course. Okay, well that's great. Okay, so you said your previous agent. So what was it that what other material did you work on that you were able to, I guess, send out there and have, trying to attract the attention of an agent? I mean, of course, it wasn't just this one piece.
No, in fact, she didn't even originally sign me for this piece. I I used to have a blog that was called 52 Love, and I wrote one love lesson per week. So it's 52 Love, one intimacy tip per week. And people really enjoyed that and suggested that I turn it into a book. I ended up doing a podcast for it for an entire year. I had a different guest or a couple on each week. I gave them the love lesson, had them try it, and they would come on the show, talk about it, and then promote whatever they do in the industry. And so that is something that she really liked. And she's someone I met at the Las Vegas Writers Conference.
Hmm.
So I asked her, can you help? I know that you do nonfiction proposals. I've always been working with fiction. Can you help me figure out how to write a proposal so that I can attempt this book? And she said, send it to me. So I sent it to her and she said, can we, jump on a call to talk about this? Sure. And when we did that, I didn't realize that was the call, like, oh, I thought you were just going to talk, calling me to help me
I
through
thought we
this.
were just going to chat.
Right. No, she offered representation, but I hadn't queried her. It wasn't that kind of thing. It was, can you
Hmm.
help me work through this? Because we had a good relationship just through networking and connecting. I consider her a friend. I still consider her a friend, even though she's not my agent anymore. And so she signed me for that book. And when I told her that I had this novel, she read it and she's like, I love it, give it to me. But she wasn't able to sell it, one, because she didn't have the connections. It's not actually what she represented, which is why I hadn't queried her with it.
Mm.
And then we were getting all this feedback about the vampire thing. And when I went to my character and was like, are you a vampire? Well, yeah. Why didn't you tell me that? He's based on the god of lies. Why would I think he was going to tell me the truth?
Right, right. Were you, so actually a quick question about that. So did you have to kind of like use a lot more vampire lore and
No,
of the mythology to
no, I went through
incorporate?
it. I went through it and realized, oh my gosh, they're right. It's all here. Like, he's fixated on her neck. He thinks about her pulse. He never has a heartbeat. His skin is always cold. And there's even mention of a blood contract, something he says to her. It's like, how could I possibly not see that?
Wow. Talk about your subconscious just kind of like really like kicking in the door.
I went through the entire thing, and I'm telling you that the overwhelming number of changes that I made are just whenever you go through your book, you always revise. Like, it's impossible not to revise.
Hmm.
I would say that maybe 5% of my changes were bumping, like just making it clear that he is a vampire, like tweaking a line. But I didn't have to add any chapters. I didn't have to do anything that wasn't already there. I just kind of gave it a little boost.
Hmm. So did that kind of set you on a certain kind of path? I mean, you didn't want to just write vampire stuff. I mean, you just wanted to write because it says you've written fiction and nonfiction.
Yes.
So were you just that was just like one idea and you had like, oh, I have this thing that's totally different and I'm gonna write a book about that now.
I have another book that I am almost finished with. There are no vampires in that book.
This one's werewolves.
No. But it still deals with relationships and desires, the same kind of push and pull, taboo relationships. I tend to write love stories that don't have a promise of a happy ending
Hmm, okay.
because, that's the way life is. Sometimes it's happy, sometimes it's not, but it's not a romance because I'm not going to guarantee you we're going to get to that spot.
Okay. So is this one also fiction or is this more
Yes,
because
it's
okay.
definitely fiction.
Okay. Can you at least hint at what what genre it would fall under?
I guess you would say it's romantic women's fiction.
Okay.
It's
So
the
not
most
really like a
beautiful woman in the world can't get her husband to sleep with her, but she
I
finds
was gonna say it's not really a bodice ripper type of thing.
no, no, but she finds someone who will.
Oh, okay. That's great. That's great. So, okay, so we've kind of covered the author aspect. So let's talk about the actress part because you said when you were starting out, there were, I guess, a limited selection of roles that you could go for.
Mhm.
How has that developed over the years? I mean, there's a lot more diversity in casting now, and that they can say, Sarah, 45, and just like no description and
Right.
they'll just say it's like open casting.
Any ethnicity. The only
Right.
time I have any trouble is I'm very tall, so they have difficulty finding. I'm really not that tall, but I'm man-sized. I'm 5'10", so
Okay.
it's difficult to find someone who can be a little bit taller than I am when I'm
Hmm.
wearing heels.
Okay.
So I
Okay.
tend to, yeah, almost always have to wear flats for things because very few men in the industry, just very few men in general, the average height is 5'10" for a man. So
Well, I'm happy to say I'm just above average. Thank goodness for that.
so there's
So,
that, which has nothing to do with my race. And then if there's a family situation, sometimes there's putting me in a family because I'm biracial. It's like,
Hmm.
if it's a Black family, well, why am I so pale? And if it's a white family, why do I not look like them? Which is funny because I'm from a blended family. Just blend the family.
Right. And I think also if I've seen on so many, shows and in films that, mixed families are becoming so much more commonplace
Right.
that
You're
I
starting to
would think
see it a
that it
lot
would become
more.
less and less of an issue as time went on.
And it's not that it's more commonplace, they're just showing it more.
Mhm.
It was
That's
already there.
right.
It
Right.
was already happening. It just wasn't in the media. And now it's one of those things where they're just showing it. It's just okay. We don't even have to give an explanation. Did you
Okay.
see that how the Fall of the House of Usher?
Oh, I haven't watched it yet, no.
Well,
But
don't do what I did, which is brush up on the book so that you can follow along because it doesn't follow the book at all. That it references many of Poe's
mhm.
writings. So if you're generally familiar with his writings, you're going the first episode I hated because this isn't the book at all. But then once I realized what they were doing, it was really kind of brilliant because they were incorporating so many elements of his writing across the board.
Mhm.
But the families there all mixed up with no explanation.
Okay, so what are some of the so as an actress, but also as a writer? So like when you get a script and for no matter what the project is, do you go through it? Do you read it first as an actress and then you go through it with your writer's brain and kind of like okay, and you go to the writer, you go to the director, say,
It
I've
is
got notes.
impossible to turn off the writer brain. Sometimes I'll go there, it's like, oh, the sentence could be improved. Shut up, just read the script. Like you have to tell it, stop. It's really my editor brain more than my writer brain.
Sure.
It's like that's their style. Just read it. Like just read the story. Just find out what happens. So I have to argue with myself and just read it as the actor. And then sometimes I have to find myself in it. If it is written in a voice that doesn't quite match mine, I have to find, okay, well, where do we connect? What do we
Mhm.
have in common? And so I have to really shut down the writer side and slip into the skin of the character, basically. But
Sure.
because I'm a writer, I am well versed in being those characters. Like, everyone you write is basically some piece of yourself, even if it's someone you don't like. There's probably some element of yourself in that character.
Sure. So I was going to ask, do you ever get into kind of like a like that whole my character would never say that sort of thing, or is it kind of like
Yes.
have you ever like had to really stand your ground about that?
Yes, I have. I was reading for a character who's 1,000 years old, and they had her saying just this, and she's based on a Norse god,
Okay.
and they had her saying, Jesus Christ. Like, she's not going to say that. She believes in herself. You know what I mean? Like she is
Sure.
the goddess, and she's not going to reference this, and she's not going to, and it was like they were in the South. That's Southern slang. The way they kept using it's like she is not going to speak that way. They have her holding onto a vehicle because she is the type of character who doesn't like to let go of the past. So she's also not going to start assimilating by taking on the slang of the people around her because okay, some characters will do that to fit in. She's not interested in fitting in. So I did take a stand, and the writer was really great about it.
That's great. That's great. So okay, here's another question. I believe you've also made some short films as well.
I directed my first short film in October.
Oh, congratulations. That's great. So that opens up a whole new field of questions. So is it I assume it was a script that you wrote.
Yes.
Okay.
It was
So
based on the first short story that I ever had published.
okay.
So I took that and I adapted it into a script. And that was actually the first character who ever talked to me. Another vampire, but he told
I'm detecting a theme here. How was the process for okay, let's start with it was a short story. How was it adapting that into a script?
Well, because I was in the character's head, it did pose a challenge. Like, how am I going to show this stuff that he's thinking?
Hmm.
And I had to do something which I really don't like in most films, which is use flashbacks. But I used critique groups and I workshopped it and I made sure that it was used effectively. It wasn't just a crutch. And they were short. Like, it's one of my pet peeves when people use it as a crutch, but they were short, they were quick, and it moved the story forward rather than making us stuck in the past.
Mhm. So I also wanted to ask, so, okay, you had this script that you wrote based on your own material, and you're going to make the film. Do you kind of, like, write it, like, with your producer's hat on? Like, "Okay,
Yes.
how can I do this scene or this whole thing, for as inexpensively as possible?"
Well, okay, I wouldn't say I wrote it with my producer's hat on,
Okay.
because when you're in the writing mode, you just need to get it on the page. But I edited it with my producer's hat on.
Ah, okay. Okay, well, like, yeah, because like I've worked on a script, and one of the scenes was, this doctor has an ornate office, and the producer came to me and he said, "Can we change it to he has a very drab office?" And I said, "Sure. Yeah, we just saved $10,000 off the budget."
I have
So
the Smith Center, which is our very ornate theater here, and they wanted $5,000 for 4 hours. Like, yeah, I can't afford that for a short film. That's like half the budget.
mm,
So we ended up doing it at UNLV outside the theater there, and they let us do it for free. So
I was gonna say
here's UNLV.
I was gonna say you probably got some great college student crew as well.
And they let us use all the people in the background as free extras
Oh, wow.
because they actually had a performance going, and they're like, "Here, just enjoy. Thank
That's
you. Thank you. Thank you." It ended up
fantastic.
working.
So what is the status of that project? Is it
It's in the editing stages
okay?
because we wrapped filming in November, and now we're in the we're about halfway through the first edit.
What okay, well, real quick, so it's your first short. So what are some lessons or some very helpful pieces of advice that you would pass on to other aspiring short filmmakers?
Make a shot list before you go into field and go over it with your cinematographer, with your DP. Make sure that you are on the same page so that you can move things quickly and that you have a checklist, and make sure you have plenty of copies of that checklist so that your sound person knows what they need to get and your assistant director is on top of things if you're busy with something else.
Mhm.
The first day of filming, that night, I dreamt of just people saying my name 1,000 times. It was just over and over and over again because I had so many questions in that first night. It wasn't a problem. It was just, man, that was a lot of questions for one day.
Oh, I really thought it was gonna be you had so many fires to put out.
I wouldn't say that there were fires. There were challenges and we had to
Mhm.
find a way around them. Like the house that we used wasn't quite going to work for the first thing. So we adapted. We used different rooms in the house than what were in the script. Like, it was supposed to be the master bedroom. We ended up using the garage,
Oh.
and it made a much better backdrop. Like, there were things in the garage that made the set look so much cooler than if it had just been an empty bedroom.
Mhm. Yeah, well, I have heard that, like, sometimes, like, a last minute change has a much better result, a more positive impact on the project than you
Right.
could have even anticipated.
Absolutely. Is just, wow, I couldn't have planned this, and it's better than what I did plan, actually.
That's fantastic. So I'm just another item from your bio, that you belong to the Las Vegas Screenwriters group, and also the writers of Southern. I say Nevada. Is it Nevada?
It's Nevada.
Nevada. Okay,
It's
that's
Nevada
fine.
if you live here, it's Nevada if you
Oh,
don't.
okay. I had a feeling it was something like that. So you'd mentioned writers groups and critique groups before. That what for you? What are the benefits of being parts of those groups?
Well, first and foremost, you improve your writing. If you go into it with an open mind, if you go into it with the the mind to receive feedback and apply it to your work. I'm not saying that every time someone gives you a change, you need to make that change, but you should at least think about it. You
Hmm.
should consider, well, why are they suggesting it? Maybe it's indicative of a problem that has nothing to do with this, but if you change this, this won't be a problem anymore. So
Okay.
that's one of the biggest reasons to join a writing group, is because by listening to other people get critiqued, by critiquing other people's work, and by having your work critiqued, you will be a better writer. But another reason is for community. You are around people who are going through the same struggles. You can get advice from people who have been in the trenches longer than you have. There are many different ways to get published. Like, do you want to go the self-publishing route? Do you want to go directly to a publisher? Do you want to be traditionally published and get an agent? There are people there who will be able to teach you how to do that so that you don't have to make mistakes, trial and error. I mean, you're going to make mistakes, but let's reduce them and learn from other people's mistakes.
Right. You have that like almost built-in support network.
Right. And people outside of the writing community don't often understand. They're like, "Oh, you've decided to write a book. When is it coming out?" Like, it's not the next month. You know, it's a very long process, and sometimes they don't understand just how difficult the path is or how many times you have to revise it. You don't just write it and put it out into the world. I mean, you
Mhm.
could, but it's probably not going to do very well.
Right, right. Okay, so I do want to touch a little bit since this is the area that I'm really interested in is the screenwriting aspect. So is there a genre or genres that you like really enjoy writing, or do you just kind of like, I like to write everything?
No, I prefer dramatic screenplays. I There can be humor in it, but for some reason, I always fall back on that. Like, I'm not very skilled when it comes to sci-fi. I enjoy watching it, but I don't think
Hmm.
that I'm the right person to write that. And I'm not great with comedy. It's like I wouldn't say I'm not great with it. It's just not my forte. I
Okay.
can tell when something's funny, and sure, I can have funny elements, but I don't want it to just be funny. I like things to be. I'm a very serious person, and so you know,
So says
obvious,
the woman with a post picture of Star Destroyers on
right?
her back wall. Very serious.
I'm
Yes, yes.
lawful evil. No.
Knew it. So actually, that raises a great question. So, like, what if you were at the screenwriting group and someone says, "Okay, I've got this first 10 pages of my new script, and it's it's a horror."
I love
And
horror.
okay, so I was gonna say, do you? Well, okay, you say, okay, give me, because like I've been in
I will
writers groups.
read, in the screenwriting groups, I'm never going to say to someone, I don't have any useful feedback for you,
Okay.
because I can still hear if something makes sense.
Hmm.
If I can't picture what you're trying to show me, that's still a valuable piece of feedback, don't you think?
Oh yeah, yeah, very much so. I mean, because I've been part of groups because and someone will say, I really don't like horror, or this really isn't a genre I get into. So I'm always a little hesitant to ask someone who would not be as, I don't know, receptive to reading that kind of genre. Because like, I mean,
Mhm.
I write, fun, adventure, thrill ride type things,
Yeah.
and I've had people say like, it's not really my thing. I'm like, okay, I mean,
Right, but I
they
mean, you
give
were
what
able
notes
to
they
read it
can.
and say, "Was it thrilling? Did it keep you on the edge of your seat?" Like, maybe it's not something that you enjoy because you haven't read anything good in that genre, you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, who knows? Well, but they give what notes they can, and I'll
Right.
take whatever feedback I can get, and sometimes maybe they'll make a good point, or maybe they'll say something that is totally opposite of what I was going for. So
Yeah.
not as you said, I don't have to take everything that every
Right.
suggestion that is given to
Consider
me.
it, but you don't have to, take the note, consider it, but you don't have to make the change.
Right? Is it worth taking into consideration if and is it something I hadn't even thought of maybe?
Right.
And so sometimes there is that benefit, but it's like you said, it's all subjective.
I have
And
received great notes from people who don't read my genres.
hmm, okay.
It's just it's because they don't read it,
Hmm.
because they aren't anticipating what it's going to be, or they don't already know, well, basically the story will be something like this. They don't already know those elements, so they bring forth questions that you're like, "Oh, that is a great point. I should probably add a detail about that." I'm not going to rewrite an entire story based on a note like that, but I can absolutely sprinkle in details that maybe they wouldn't have, that they wouldn't have caught.
Hmm. Okay. So so since there are things that you kind of like specialize in, have members of your writing group come to you like on the side say, "Hey Tanya, I've got this, I got this horror thing, and I know
All
the
the
rest
time.
I know the rest of the group's not really going to care for it, but I think you'd be really into it. What do you think?"
At this point, I get paid to be a developmental editor for screenplays and for books,
Hmm.
and it started off, I was a critiquer, and because of the feedback I was giving, people were constantly asking me to read their work. And at a certain point, I realized I can't spend all of my time doing this and not pursuing things that make money or working on my own writing. So I started charging for it.
That's great. That is fantastic. That's what a lot of writers, almost aspire to do. Like, I want to write, but I also want to help other writers as well.
Right. And, I'm not saying I never do anything for free, but it's probably like a barter thing. Like, okay, you read mine, I read yours.
Sure.
We're both getting something out of it. I I still go to critique groups and give advice for free. It's not like I'm saying I only accept projects that benefit me in some way. No, I go to critique groups all the time. I have multiple critique groups, both screenwriting and book writing
Hmm.
critique groups. But if I'm going to spend hours of my time reading through something, that's taking away from time that I could be writing or
Exactly.
auditioning. It's taking away from time where I could be working on something that pays my bills, and you can't pay your bills with passion.
Well, that's also something I found is that when writers send their material out, whether it's to get notes back or they're like seeking representation or to like someone within an industry, whichever one that is, that when they don't get a response back as fast as they want, it's kind of like, what else are they doing? Why are they not
What
dropping
else
everything?
are they
Because
doing?
they also forget that a lot of these people, especially reps and producers, they've got their own clients to
Right,
deal
which
with. They've
those
got
are their
their own the
money
stuff that
makers. You have to
yeah,
go
they've
there
got stuff
first.
they've already been working on, and also they have lives too. They have
Right.
families, and they've got I got to take my kids to soccer practice, and then a lot of writers like forget that other people have
A
lives
query
too.
is potential money. A client is money, and money
Hmm.
takes care of your family and yourself. Like you have to take care of that area first, and then what else do we have?
Yeah, yeah. So I just, it's great to hear that that you're able to give back to the community because a lot of writers are hesitant to do that because sometimes they think, oh, my critiquing skills aren't good enough, or I'm just not interested in reading other people's material.
I started like that though. I used to not say anything because I thought, what value does my feedback have? I don't know what I'm doing. That's why I'm here.
Hmm.
But eventually you realize that everybody's feedback has some kind of value. It's not all equal, and it depends on the person who is sharing their work and the people in the room. Like this person might be better for this person's work, but there's always something that you can say. Even if you're just saying, "Hey, I didn't understand it, but it sounded cool."
Hmm. Okay, I have one last question before we start to wrap things up. Have you ever given notes or feedback on something, and that the writer was angry at you?
Yes.
Pretty much of the how dare you question my genius?
Yes. In a few situations, and one of them sadly was racially based because he was writing something and he was saying some things about his and he grew up in the South, and he was saying these things like they were fact. And I didn't say that he was wrong. I just said, my concern is that if you put this out here in the world right now, you're going to come off as racist. People could potentially read this and make these assumptions about you. But he took that as me censoring his work and telling him that he's not allowed to say, like, I never said you can't say it. I'm telling you,
Hmm.
I'm advising you that this is how people will probably take that. Please take that into consideration. Possibly say it like this. And he didn't like that. And I don't have his business anymore. But
Hmm.
okay, I don't have to have this argument anymore.
Okay, well, that's the thing is that if you're a writer, you have to have a thick skin. I mean,
Right.
some you actually have to be bulletproof. That not everybody's going to like your stuff, and you
Right.
have to deal with that.
And it hurts. It's okay for it to hurt. Use that pain.
Apply it into your next horror comedy. Uh,
Right.
okay, so Tanya, you do have an online presence. So where can people find out more about you?
My website is www.mstonyatodd.com. That's mstonyatodd.com. I'm available across social media at Ms. Tonya Todd. I'm a co-host on the Fem On podcast. You can find me there talking about activism and fitness. And you can join my newsletter at my website.
That's right. Do you have so are any of your published works on Amazon for people to track down?
No, that 52 Love book is
Mm.
with the publisher right now. I ended up getting
Ah,
an independent deal with Four Horsemen Press, and I'm waiting for the release date.
okay. Great. Tonya, this has been a great time. I'm so glad we were finally able to set this up.
Yes, I'm glad we connected.
Me too. And I'm sure Justin is kicking himself right now as he finishes watching this, thinking, oh, I could have been part of that. But darn
Next
these
time.
germs. Well, he's got small children, so it's probably more susceptible to it anyway. Okay,
Yes.
so Tonya, okay, MsTonyaTodd.com. Tonya, again, thank you so much for being on the show. This was really, really nice.
I am so glad we finally connected.
Me too. Great. Well, I would normally, Justin would say you can check out his stuff on Amazon at Justin Sloan, and you can check out my stuff, my screenwriting blog, MaximumZ.blog. It's all about screenwriting. You can check out my books on Amazon. I'm also still on Twitter, and I'm not calling it by that single letter thing, at
Same.
maximum. At maximum_Z. I've also got Instagram, which I'm doing a little more with my writing at Pez, P-E-Z screenwriting. Feel free to check it all out. Like she said, she's Tonya. I'm Paul. Thanks to Justin, who unfortunately couldn't be here today. This has been the Creative Writing Life podcast. Thanks for listening. Stay safe, stay healthy. Most importantly, go write something.